A bold proposal to send Western troops into Ukraine may not be as firm as it once sounded. According to a report in The Telegraph, European leaders have privately acknowledged that any deployment would require Russian consent. Publicly, some leaders insisted Moscow would have no veto. Privately, diplomats now admit the risks of escalation are real, with Moscow warning that foreign troops would be treated as legitimate targets. The debate over boots on the ground is entering a more cautious phase, and behind closed doors, the calculations appear to be shifting. Western European nations may not deploy troops into Ukraine without Russian consent. That is according to The Telegraph, which cited anonymous diplomatic and defense sources familiar with internal discussions. The proposed UK-French initiative had been presented publicly as a deterrent measure that could follow a potential peace agreement. But behind the scenes, the tone appears more cautious. One senior diplomatic source told the newspaper that coalition members have privately conceded they would only send our troops if there's Russian consent. Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly rejected the idea of NATO troops being stationed in Ukraine. Moscow has warned that foreign forces would be considered legitimate military targets. According to the report, those warnings are being taken seriously in European capitals. One source admitted that Russian opposition has had a tremendous effect on the discussions. A European defense source described the entire proposal as rather hypothetical. Some Western leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, have insisted that Russia's consent would not be necessary for a European deployment. But behind closed doors, reality appears more complicated. Reports now suggest that any such mission by European members of NATO would hinge on one critical factor: firm security guarantees from the United States. Without Washington's military umbrella, hesitation is growing, and the appetite for action is fading fast. Moscow continues to cast the war in Ukraine as a full-scale proxy confrontation with NATO, a Western campaign designed to weaken Russia. Since the 2022 escalation, sweeping sanctions and diplomatic isolation have followed. Yet shifting political winds in Washington, including renewed pushes for a negotiated settlement, are reshaping the strategic landscape and leaving Europe caught between resolve and uncertainty. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has publicly suggested that foreign troops could deploy inside Ukraine immediately after a peace agreement is signed. Rutte said armed forces from NATO countries willing to participate would move in as soon as a deal is concluded.
The United States, Europe and Canada have affirmed their readiness to provide the assurance that Ukraine needs to be able to forge a peace with Russia. The members of the Coalition of the Willing made encouraging progress on these guarantees when they met last month in Paris. I was at that meeting, and so was President Zelensky. Some European allies have announced that they will deploy troops to Ukraine after a deal is reached. Troops on the ground, jets in the air, ships on the Black Sea. The United States will be the backstop. Others have vowed to support in other ways. The security guarantees are solid. And this is crucial because we know that getting to an agreement to end this terrible war will require difficult choices. Ukraine needs to know with absolute certainty that whatever sacrifices you have made, the lives you have lost, the devastation you have endured, will not be at risk of repetition. You need to know that this peace will be lasting, not because papers have been signed, but because there is hard power to back it up.
The comment reframes the meaning of a ceasefire. What was expected to mark the end of active hostilities is now being discussed as the starting point for a new security presence, one involving Western troops on Ukrainian soil. According to Ruta, these forces would be part of post-war security guarantees. But the scale, mandate, and duration of such deployments remain undefined, raising fears of mission creep and escalation. The idea of foreign troops in Ukraine, once unthinkable, is now being openly discussed at the highest levels. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also confirmed that current security guarantee proposals involve deploying European forces inside Ukraine, with American backing. Rubio suggested the presence would be limited but symbolic. According to him, the plan centers on a handful of European troops, primarily from France and the United Kingdom, operating under a broader U.S. security backstop. The message: Europe provides the boots, Washington provides the shield. Russia's response was immediate and unequivocal. Moscow's foreign ministry warns that any deployment of Western troops, bases, depots, or military infrastructure in Ukraine would be viewed as foreign intervention and a direct threat to Russia's national security. Russian officials argue that NATO's presence, even after a peace deal, would violate the spirit of any agreement and erase the line between diplomacy and confrontation. The timing is critical. These statements come just days before scheduled Ukraine-Russia-US talks in Abu Dhabi, where negotiators are meant to explore pathways toward ending the war. Instead, Ruta's remarks risk hardening positions. For Moscow, they reinforce long-standing fears that NATO expansion is the real objective. For Kyiv and its allies, they underline concerns about preventing future Russian attacks.
Times of India videos, your daily dose of India and the world. Global news, different views, and sharp analysis.
Pressure of expectation from your fans, your supporters.
That has often served as a backdrop for several Bollywood.
You're not a brute majority anymore. If you individually take out they right.
Making sense of global conflicts. Tracking the new emerging world order.
Strike on Israeli military bases.
A multi-pronged.
To stay out of harm's way as Israel started bombing targets across.
Understanding changing alliances in a polarized world. Tune into TOI videos for all this and more. Click on the bell icon to subscribe and never miss an update.